The Utah War Behind American Primeval, a true conflict shaping Netflix's Western series. Netflix's American Primeval is one of the most thrilling and captivating Western miniseries of 2025, set against the backdrop of the Utah War. The show, directed by Peter Berg and written by Mark L. Smith, known for his work on The Revenant, takes audiences deep into the violent, unforgiving world of the American frontier during the mid-1800s. The central plot follows Sarah Rowell and her son as they traverse the wilderness to find Sarah's husband, encountering incredible hardships, treacherous landscapes, and a series of hostile forces. As the series progresses, the characters come into contact with real historical events, particularly the Utah War, which serves as the catalyst for much of the drama. While American Primeval certainly delivers on action, violence, and drama, the show is firmly rooted in the historical tensions that existed between Mormon settlers and the U.S. government. The Utah War, a relatively obscure conflict in American history, forms the backdrop of the narrative, and many of the events portrayed in the show are directly linked to the real-life conflict. This article will explore the Utah War's historical significance, how American Primeval brings these events to life, and where the series stays true to history, and where it takes creative liberties. The Utah War, who fought and why. The Utah War, also known as the Mormon Rebellion, took place from May 1857 to July 1858, and was a culmination of decades of mounting tension between the Mormon settlers in the Utah Territory and the United States federal government. The conflict was essentially a confrontation over control of the Utah Territory, with both the Mormons and the federal government having very different visions of the region's future. The roots of the war can be traced back to the mid-1840s, when Brigham Young and his followers, fleeing religious persecution in the East, settled in the Utah Territory. They created their own self-sustaining theocratic society, with Young as the leader of both the church and the government. Over the next decade, the Mormons became increasingly isolated from the federal government, who grew concerned about their increasing power and the potential for rebellion. Tensions reached a boiling point in 1857 when President James Buchanan, fearing the Mormon influence over the region, appointed a new non-Mormon governor to oversee the Utah Territory. Buchanan's decision was made without consulting Brigham Young, and it was perceived by many Mormons as a direct challenge to their autonomy. In response, Young and his followers were deeply suspicious and took immediate action to protect their control over the area. Buchanan sent 2,500 troops to the region, which escalated the situation and set the stage for conflict. The Mormons were not interested in engaging in direct battle, but they were ready to take measures to protect their way of life. The Mountain Meadows Massacre, a dark chapter in the Utah War. One of the most significant and tragic events during the Utah War, which is prominently featured in American Primeval, was the Mountain Meadows Massacre. In 1857, a group of emigrants traveling from Arkansas to California were attacked and killed by a Mormon militia near the Mountain Meadows, located in present-day southern Utah. The massacre is infamous not only because of its horrific nature but also because it involved the deaths of 120 innocent people, including women and children. The Mountain Meadows Massacre was rooted in the increasing paranoia and hostility between the Mormons and outsiders. The emigrants were suspected of being a threat by the Mormon militia, and the tension culminated in a brutal attack. What makes the massacre particularly haunting is the fact that it was initially carried out by a group of Mormon settlers, but it was later revealed that it was sanctioned by church leaders, including Brigham Young. The exact motivations behind the massacre remain controversial, but it was part of the broader struggle over control of the Utah Territory. Who won the Utah War and what it meant? Despite the Mormons' resistance, the Utah War ended with the federal government regaining control over the Utah Territory. While the Mormons fought hard to protect their land and way of life, they were ultimately outmatched by the superior resources of the U.S. government. The conflict did not result in a traditional military victory for either side, but the negotiations that followed marked a decisive shift in the balance of power. In the end, the United States government negotiated a settlement with the Mormons, agreeing to grant a full pardon to those who had engaged in rebellion, except for those involved in the Mountain Meadows Massacre. This agreement allowed federal troops to enter the Utah Territory and reassert control, which included the appointment of Alfred Cumming as the new governor. Cumming was not a Mormon, which was a significant blow to the Mormons, who had controlled the territory up until that point. The Mormon community was forced to accept the end of their semi-autonomy and the beginning of federal control. The Utah War ultimately weakened the influence of the Mormon Church in the territory, although the Mormons remained a powerful force in the region. Over time, the Mormon population grew, and their presence in the West became firmly entrenched, though it would take years before the tensions between the Mormons and the U.S. government fully dissipated. How accurate is American Primeval's Utah War? American Primeval does an admirable job of capturing the essence of the Utah War, though, like many historical dramas, it takes some creative liberties. The series, which is set in 1857, focuses primarily on the early stages of the conflict and the interactions between key figures like Brigham Young and Jim Bridger. While the show does not delve deeply into the full scope of the Utah War, it accurately portrays some of the critical moments, such as the Mormons' defensive strategies and the burning of Fort Bridger. Fort Bridger, a pivotal location in the series, was bought by the Mormons in 1855 and eventually burned down in an attempt to prevent U.S. Army troops from using it as a base during the Utah War. This event is depicted in the series, with Brigham Young's desire to destroy the fort in order to deny the U.S. Army any advantage. Final thought: the Utah War's lasting impact on American Primeval and American history. American Primeval provides a gripping and intense portrayal of the Utah War, shedding light on a relatively forgotten conflict in American history. The series does an excellent job of weaving real historical events into its narrative, using the war to drive the personal struggles and conflicts of its characters. While the show does not cover every detail of the war, the accuracy with which it presents key moments, including the Mountain Meadows Massacre and the burning of Fort Bridger, is impressive. For those unfamiliar with the Utah War, American Primeval offers an engaging introduction to the conflict, and it also serves as a reminder that history is often darker and more complicated than we might expect. The Utah War was not just a battle for land, it was a fight for power, survival, and the future of an entire region. American Primeval succeeds in bringing these historical struggles to life while also offering a thrilling narrative that keeps viewers on the edge of their seats.